In a universe ruled by unstoppable aliens, harnessing incredibly advanced technology and manipulating black holes at will. Capable of obliterating entire galaxies, an orphaned child sets out on a dangerous journey to find his mother. The story becomes even more interesting when some armed people were in a building and began scanning all the area around them. One of them noticed something moving. They all pointed their guns forward, and when they turned on their flashlights, there was a little kid who had countless scars on his body. He tried his hardest to run away from them, but they caught him with a net. After some time, that kid opens his eyes and finds himself lying on a bed. The bright sunlight was blinding, and the place was a children's shelter. As he slowly tries to get up, he finds this place too strange because of the smooth floor, fresh clothes, and meals that arrived on schedule. The child spent most of his time on the hill. When some kids found him alone, they tried to pull him with them to play together. Like an animal, he crouched down and screamed loudly, scaring all the other kids away. Suddenly, he saw a butterfly near his head and started to play with it. A red-haired woman watched him from a window. She asks a girl if the kid is unable to speak. The girl denies it, explaining that he simply hasn't learned how yet, and that the rescue team mentioned he probably grew up with animals. When she says it's literally Mowgli, the other girl looks puzzled. The red-haired woman laughs, remarking that young people may not know, and that's understandable. She adds that it's from a story before he came. A bell starts ringing on the roof of a house, and all the kids started gathering near a young girl. Our MC began curiously watching them, as that girl begins to hand some letters to the kids. Suddenly, he hears a voice telling him it's a letter. A red-haired little girl explains that it was sent by a sponsor, and sometimes they send gifts. She asks if he doesn't have a sponsor, but he doesn't answer her. She starts dragging him along with her, and they end up burying him in the soil as they argue about adults deciding that half are kind and half are bad. While they eat together, the girl talks about a huge toy given to someone by a sponsor who wouldn't stop bragging about it. They're both together when she mentions that Lily's sponsor bought her clothes. While studying, she tells him that Joe even talked with his sponsor, and it's really disgusting. Afterward, she says she doesn't need a sponsor because her mom promised to come and get her. They're hiding under a table at night when she explains that after she sleeps for just 100 nights, her mom will come, and 100 nights will pass in the blink of an eye. Then, she sadly tells him she hopes her mom comes soon. As he listened to her grievances and aspirations, he gazed at the night sky and blinked while looking at the stars. It felt as if the stars were passing by quickly. Showing an alien toy to them, someone said they came down from the farthest reaches of space. A teacher was explaining to the children how they all became friends. A kid with glasses says that was not true. One of them asked why the teacher would lie. He responded that it was obviously because they thought they were little babies. He then placed a big book in front of them. Curious, another child asked where he got it. He replied that he had taken it from the principal's office. Flipping through the pages, he began explaining that a long time ago, aliens arrived on Earth. Humans fought back using a super powerful weapon called HAEK, but the aliens ate it, and in the end, the humans had no choice but to surrender. One of the children frowned and asked why the aliens would eat a weapon. The kid with glasses shrugged and said it was simple, they were just hungry. The bell of the tower rang once more, and all the kids gathered around a young girl who was distributing letters. She called out the name Mori, who was our protagonist, and handed him a letter that had just arrived for him. As he holds the letter in his hands, he examines it closely. The young girl tells him that he has a sponsor now and asks if he isn't happy. Suddenly, he hears the clang of a bucket hitting the ground and turns to look. Mori notices that little red-haired girl standing there, her eyes filled up with tears. After that, she sat crying under a table. When Mori arrived, she told him to go away, and he started pacing around the room. Suddenly, she heard a cracking sound and turned to see what it was. A broken cookie lay on the floor, and Mori stood nearby looking nervous. She asks if these are the only things he treasures and sadly picks up the cookie. She hides her face and says that in reality 100 nights have already passed, but her mom still thinks she can't count to 100. Tears stream down her face as she murmurs that she is all alone now. Suddenly, Mori leans against her back. Confused, she turns around, but soon breaks into a quiet smile. She suddenly pulls out the cookie and asks if she can truly eat it, which makes Mori uneasy. She then waves the cookie in the air in front of the drooling Mori, and they burst into laughter playing under the table. Then she realizes he is illiterate, so she takes the letter from him and notices that it only says hello there. Confused, she turns the letter upside down to check if there's anything more. Mori notices something falling down. It was a stunning, radiant blue crystallized flower. He is astonished to see such a thing. After a while, he is holding the same flower, while all the other children around him sleep. When he brings the flower close to his nose and inhales its scent, he is mesmerized by its fragrance. Soon after, he drifts into a peaceful sleep. The tower bell rang once more, and a girl called out to Mori excitedly, showing him a new letter. Meanwhile, the red-haired woman handed him several gifts, commenting that Mori is so lucky. When his friends arrived, they were astonished to find Mori seated amidst a towering pile of presents. The red-haired girl starts reading his letter, but it consists of basic words and still has untidy handwriting while his other friends eagerly inspect his gifts. There was a talking doll and a set of colored crayons. They wondered who this person was and why they were being so generous. They thought perhaps they were incredibly wealthy, or maybe they had some hidden motive. The vibrant crayons gleamed brightly, drawing Mori's attention even more. Just as he was about to eat one, they quickly stopped him. When the red-haired girl showed him how to use it, the realization hit him like a lightning bolt, and time went by just like that. The weather was warm, so the children decided to help with the laundry. They eagerly rolled up their pants and began washing the clothes with their tiny feet, some even turning it into a playful game. Perplexed, the red-haired girl wondered what was so fascinating about it. As Mori stepped on the clothes, little colorful bubbles formed, making him even more excited, until he suddenly slipped and tumbled into the bucket. Someone called out to the red-haired girl as she warned Mori not to step too hard. Just then she turned around in confusion and saw a woman rushing toward her, calling her by the name Radina. Overcome with joy, she dashed forward, accidentally toppling the bucket. As she reached the woman, she threw her arms around her, crying out, calling her mom. As Radina embraced her mother in front of the other orphaned children, Mori stood there completely stunned, watching the scene unfold before him. The next day her eyes were swollen from crying, and she told Mori to take care. She cautioned him not to eat too fast, or he'd end up with indigestion. Then she handed him her shoes and a small bag, gently telling him not to walk around barefoot anymore. Suddenly she began crying again, looking even more endearing, and quickly wrapped her arms around him. Through her tears she told him he absolutely had to be happy. Mori smiled and held her just as tightly in return. After some time had passed, Radina stood with her mother, bidding farewell to the other orphaned kids. Among them, Mori silently watched everything unfold. Then, without a word, he went back to sitting on the hill once again. Even though the absence of a friend left a big hole in his heart, he didn't feel lonely, because the letters and gifts someone had sent were still by his side. The cloak was as soft and comforting as warm sunlight. The colorful crayons and talking doll brought him so much joy, and the kind letters carried the gentle scent of fragrant wildflowers. As Mori breathed in the delicate scent of flowers and the letter, his memories began to surface. He recalled the time when his friends eagerly speculated about the sender's identity, and, in that moment, the image of Radina's joyful face filled his mind. Then Mori pondered whether this person could be his mother. Mori gathered his belongings and placed them in the bag his friend had given him. He glanced back one last time and bid farewell to the orphanage in the distance. As he took his first steps, he noticed a railway ahead. He began following the tracks and set off on an unknown path to meet his mom. A herd of cows was resting when one of them wandered to a pile of dried grass and licked Mori with its long tongue, waking him. He wiped his hair with his tiny hands. He was on a train, staring out of the door, unaware that the train he had boarded without hesitation was already carrying him on a long journey to reunite with his mother. Mori stepped onto the ground, bidding farewell to the halted train. He gazed ahead for a while before venturing alone into the vast desert. There was nothing but endless sand and a few scattered rocks trembling from a distant rumble. Puzzled, Mori turned around. In the far distance, a cloud of dust rose as figures approached. They were humanoid aliens speeding toward him on bikes, armed with guns. A wave of fear washed over him as he tried to flee, but they swiftly surrounded him from all sides. A figure with red skin, white hair, and a black jacket watched from a cliff as the humanoid aliens surrounded Mori. The aliens questioned whether he was truly human, as Mori had crouched like an animal. They were debating whether this was truly a human and questioning why it was so small. One of them wondered if they could still sell it, which made Mori even more uneasy. Another alien suggested taking a small bite. As he moved closer to Mori, he remarked that it was so small nobody would even notice, and that just one leg wouldn't make a difference. Meanwhile, someone was approaching from behind. Suddenly, another alien slammed him to the ground, demanding to know who gave him permission to touch it as he pleased. The alien quickly apologized, addressing him as boss. The boss glanced at Mori and commented that something this size wouldn't even reach the liver. But then he hesitated as if realizing something. Suddenly, one of the aliens' heads burst into pieces. They all froze in fear, realizing it was a bullet. Someone was approaching them from a distance. It was an alien with multiple eyes and 2 horns, riding a sleek, intimidating-looking bike equipped with 2 machine guns. The boss calls him Ryder and directs his goons not to panic, assuring them it's just one. They opened fire on him, but Ryder accelerated his bike even faster, easily dodging every shot. The alien boss grew angrier and charged forward, preparing his right hand to strike. Ryder pushed his speed to the limit, and a massive explosion erupted. As the dust settled down, there was nothing under the alien boss's hand, leaving him stunned. Ryder burst from the dust above the alien boss's head and began charging his gun with green energy. He fired a powerful plasma beam, causing the ground to crack into pieces. Mori shielded his eyes from the dust. Ryder slid his bike to a sharp stop. To his left, a colossal crater scarred the ground. He gets into an argument with someone and then turns back to look. He notices a frightened Mori standing there. Ryder stares down at him with his multiple eyes, wondering what this is now, while an enraged Mori glares back at him. Ryder calls out to Annie. A small AI emerges from his back and scans Mori before informing Ryder that it's a human infant. Suddenly, Ryder smiles, calling him Little One, making Mori confused. He assures him not to worry now that he is here and introduces him to his friend Annie, whom he created. He assures him that this Ryder will take him home, making naive Mori believe him. He orders Mori to follow him and smiles while contemplating his next move. He thinks that eating humans isn't illegal, but socially it's considered taboo. He assumes this one isn't worth eating anyway. It might be tender, but there's too little meat, and they would barely get 300. Still, he figures it's not bad money and wonders if they should sell it alive to the caves, as some eccentric folks might want it as a toy. He also notes that despite its scruffiness, its clothes look surprisingly fine and considers putting it up for auction. The Ryder's eyes fell on the symbol engraved on the backside of Mori's cloak. He calls him Little One and asks him to wait while he checks what's there. He freezes in shock upon seeing it. Then, he gets up laughing and says it's already too late. He apologizes to Mori, saying he was just too occupied. He hops back onto his bike, remarks that Mori can find his way back on his own, and speeds away from there. He looks back and sees no one there. He mentions that symbol and assumes he nearly ruined his life there. Annie calls it chickening out, and the furious Ryder snaps at her to shut up. When he says that it left his throat dry, someone hands him a water bottle, and he thanks them. Just as he's about to drink it, he suddenly stops. Realizing something, he becomes completely bewildered. He looks down and sees that the person is none other than Mori. The Ryder starts yelling at Mori and tries to force him off his bike. A small rock rolls into their path, introducing itself, and they are sent flying. After some time, as the Ryder regains consciousness, he clutches his head in pain and notices something wrapped around his body. He picks them up and realizes they are letters. Suddenly, Mori appears before him with wide-open eyes, terrifying the Ryder to the point of death. Annie exclaims that he is finally awake and explains that they were worried his body temperature might drop, so the person beside him covered him with some items and started a fire. The Ryder expresses his gratitude to both of them. Annie says he needs some rehydration, and the Ryder decides to drink some water. Mori hastily rushes off and returns with a water bottle, but a smiling rock gets in his way, causing him to spill the entire contents onto the Ryder's face. The Ryder becomes completely drenched. Mori realizes his blunder and quickly searches through his small bag for something. The Ryder begins looking closely at Mori, who is peacefully sorting out his things. He sees that symbol and all his doubts become clear. It was Patch, one of the 7 fingers of the beginning and end of the universe. Only the owner of the patch and those they permit can use this symbol. To carelessly threaten others with it is like hastening their death to the next day. The Ryder grows uneasy and checks his throat. However, he thinks a human who seems somewhat deficient, yet has a symbol engraved on most of their belongings with costly paper, worth a month's food budget, and letters filled with affection. The Ryder becomes assured that if they safely deliver the child, they can surely claim a reward. Annie mentions that the battery is running low. The Ryder advises him to get some rest, and as his bike starts to dematerialize, he surveys the desert and memorizes the path to the city. While walking, a lizard observes them, and the Ryder remarks that someone like him, a lifesaver, is rare to find in life. Some time later, the lizard found its partner, while the Ryder boasted that he was the only one who truly knew the area. After the lizard passed away as its family wept, Mori and the Ryder were still wandering through the desert. The Ryder speaks to Mori but notices him in the distance, preoccupied with something. Frustrated, the Ryder calls out, demanding how he dares not pay attention while he's speaking. But Mori was in the middle of eating a strange insect. The Ryder is struck speechless by shock and hurriedly tries to make Mori spit it out. He felt relieved at last, knowing he had succeeded. He begins to shout at Mori, but Mori looks away, and the Ryder firmly tries to turn his face towards him. He explains that if the legs have a bluish tint like this, they might be poisonous, and if the roots are swollen and round or turn blue, when threatened, they are definitely poisonous. The Ryder asks if he understands, and Mori nods. He thought there shouldn't be any more trouble now, but was startled to see Mori removing a tube from his bike. He yelled at Mori again when he saw him touching a dangerous cactus-like plant. Later, Mori got stuck in a swamp, and the Ryder washed him up, scolding him once more. Eventually, he lay on the ground completely drained, reflecting on his life choices. He looks at Mori, who is drawing something. The Ryder slowly crawls toward him to see what he is working on today. Mori mumbles something and shows him the drawings, but the Ryder doesn't understand what he is saying. The rider notices a box with Mori written on it and wonders if it is a name. He points at a drawn figure wearing a black jacket and asks what the black thing is. Mori points at his face. Shocked rider tries to confirm it again. The rider takes a closer look at the drawing and stares at it for a long time. It was the first time anyone had drawn him. Annie teases him, saying he seems to be in a good mood, and the flustered rider fiercely denies it. Annie glances at the drawing, assuming that the flat round figure must be him, and remarks that while the observation skills are decent, the descriptive ability is lacking. He gives it 50 points. The rider grins and suggests that Mori should draw him in a more impressive way, and the night passes like that. The next day, as the sun rises, the rider checks their location while standing on a cliff. He estimates that once they cross that hill, they will reach their destination. He becomes furious when he sees Mori run off without listening. He warns that if Mori doesn't hurry, he will leave him behind. However, he suddenly grows confused upon spotting Mori with an unfamiliar creature and wonders if it is a wild beast. Suddenly, the ground trembles and another of its kind emerges to protect the small creature. It places a blazing palm on Mori's shoulder and radiates intense flames across its body, deepening the rider's concern for Mori. Rider aimed his gun at the creature, shouting at it. As he fired a shot, the larger one swiftly attempted to shield the smaller one, and Rider rushed towards Mori. When Rider finally reached Mori, despair overtook him as he saw the flickering flames, fearing the child would be reduced to ashes, leaving no trace. But at that moment, the cloak billowed, and before Rider and Annie's stunned eyes, it extinguished the flames one by one like an enchanted veil. Within the cloak was a black void, and Mori collapsed after it was all over. They stood there in shock, horrified by its power. Worried, Rider asks Mori if he's okay. He begins carefully checking Mori and almost stumbles in shock. Angrily, he glances back, points his gun at the creature, and starts shouting at it. The creature moves to protect the smaller one, argues back, but Rider can't understand him and demands to know if he's pretending to be the victim. The creature grows nervous when Rider asks if his child is the only one here and shouts that Mori nearly became barbecue. As they argue, someone silently approaches them. As the ground starts to shake, Annie warns Rider that something is coming from below. Suddenly, a massive earthworm-like alien emerges and begins circling them, towering over Rider and Mori. Rider realizes it's an adult. At first, he decides he must send Mori back. Annie warns him that it's approaching, but the creature gently bonks the small one that was arguing with Rider and bows its head in apology along with the other creature. Rider is utterly baffled by this and shouts that he won't let them off easily. Then the small creature moves closer to Mori, leaving him puzzled. It offers him a shiny stone, mesmerizing him. Mori eagerly rummages through his bag and pulls out a feather for the creature. Overjoyed, they begin playfully circling around a confused Rider. After that, they left on the back of the large creature, and the small yellow creature happily looked at Mori. Rider also glanced at Mori, who was tightly holding his cloak. He tells Mori he survived because of that cloak. He explains that it's a magical item with excellent protection and likely has temperature-regulating abilities as well. He tells him to be grateful to whoever gave it to him. Joyfully, Mori begins circling around him again. After nightfall, they both slept on the ground near a fire, and Rider reflected on the moment with Mori. He calls out to Annie and orders him to display the data on humans. A digital screen starts loading before his eyes, and Annie informs him that this is all the data they have. Rider says the child must have a mother. Annie looks confused, so Rider explains that, unlike them who divide, humans reproduce. Long ago, when the Masters of Earth briefly left for space and then returned, numerous new life forms had emerged in their absence. Among them was a creature driven by immense greed and violent aggression called humans. They convinced themselves that everything, from a single blade of grass beneath their feet to other humans, belonged to them. Over time, their population gradually dwindled and disappeared. Seeing how things have turned out, Rider assumes the powerful ones didn't care much about their offspring. He glances at Mori, who is peacefully asleep. He moves closer and examines his tiny hands. Mori unconsciously grasps his thumb while resting near Rider and smiles adorably, captivating Rider with his charm. When he playfully pokes Mori's cheek, Mori shifts away, making the moment even more delightful for Rider. On the other side, someone says the forest surrounding the shelter is completely biodetected, adding that they couldn't have missed it and that it's probably because of the cloak. An alien with 4 eyes responds that he will find it without fail, while Rider continues playing with Mori, completely unaware of what's happening. The next day, Mori is still asleep when he slowly opens his eyes and finds himself in a vibrant meadow. He gets to his feet and looks around, his eyes widening in awe at its breathtaking beauty. But then he slowly opens his eyes again, and it was all a dream, and he is traveling with Rider on his bike. Rider tells Mori to take a look and points out the stunning view of the city. In the heart of the bustling market, Mori gazes up, noticing unusual architecture with unfamiliar people wandering about. They both became alert as a loud scream echoed. They saw some aliens mesmerized by Mori's cuteness. They all surrounded him and began showering him with praises, making him even more nervous. Ryder pulled Mori away from them and yelled, demanding if they had any idea how much it cost. He then declared that if they wanted to see it, they must pay, driving them away. Ryder lets out a sigh, realizing Mori draws even more attention than he expected. He steps into an area filled with peculiar aliens. Inside, Ryder becomes furious when some aliens take an interest in Mori and ask if he is the child's owner and whether they may touch him. An alien with yellow hair and two horns approaches and demands to know what's going on. Ryder addresses him as Valentine. He grows curious about Ryder's intentions and asks when he decided to raise a human. Ryder firmly responds that it's not food and warns him against getting any strange ideas. Amused, Valentine laughs and remarks that no one eats humans these days, calling it barbaric. Ryder presents one of Mori's letters and asks if he has seen the symbol before. Valentine is taken aback and asserts that the symbol serves as his payment. He recalls encountering it once during a trade negotiation, most likely in the city. A nervous Ryder asks if this is their home, and Valentine confirms it. He gestures toward Mori's black hair, noting that the man he bargained with had black hair as well. Ryder questions why they would come here, to which he responds that there is a reason for it. Ryder then tries to purchase some parts for his bike, leading to a heated bargaining session where they shout back and forth. Meanwhile, Mori and Annie play together. In the end, Valentine offers a price of 42 and firmly states that he cannot go any lower. Ryder dumps all his belongings on the ground, and Annie suggests selling a battery with 70% charge remaining. However, Ryder insists that it would be a waste to do so. Annie suggests selling Mori's letters, and Ryder asks if she expects him to starve to death. He notices the yellow stone given by that creature, and shows it to Valentine, asking how much it would sell for, making Mori anxious. Valentine recognizes it as a Tomas stone, and suddenly smashes it into pieces on the table. Mori furiously tries to attack him, but Ryder holds him back. Valentine tells them to take a closer look as the stone begins to tremble. They are both stunned as it restores itself. Valentine explains that since it absorbs light, it glows at night. Ryder asks if it is valuable, and Valentine replies that it has become so common lately that it is practically worthless. As Ryder drops the stone, Mori tries to catch it, but it rolls away. He follows it, weaving through a crowd of aliens. Just as he reaches for the stone, a strange black hand grabs it at the same time. Confused, Mori looks up and spots a sinister-looking alien with 4 hands. The alien eerily mutters, "Very cute," and moves towards Mori, prompting him to run away. Suddenly, the alien grabs Mori by the collar and stuffs him into a strange space beneath his clothes. As Mori tumbles inside, the alien briefly checks on him before sealing the entrance and scanning his surroundings to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, trapped in the darkness, Mori desperately bangs against the enclosure, making noise and calling for help. While Ryder is chatting with Valentine, he begins to worry and looks around for Mori. Suddenly, he notices something unusual. An alien trying to slip away quietly, as if avoiding attention. Just before leaving, the alien glances back at Ryder with a nervous look in its eyes, which only deepens Ryder's suspicion. Ryder chases after him and tries to stop him, but the alien slips into the main street, blending in with the crowd. Ryder keeps pursuing him while instructing Annie to scan the area. Just as Ryder reaches out to grab him, the alien leaps off the bridge. Ryder looks down and sees the alien landing on another bridge below. The alien glances back at Ryder, who angrily shouts at him as Annie reports a life form with a temperature of 36.8 degrees Celsius detected in his pocket. He tells Annie he needs to get ahead and cut them off. Ryder sprints in the same direction as the alien, while Annie follows from the other side, scanning the town and generating a virtual map. Analyzing the data on her digital screens, she calculates 14 possible routes. Based on the alien's speed and direction, she determines Route 2 as the most likely path and begins guiding Ryder, who quickly ascends the stairs ahead. Meanwhile, the alien searches for a hiding spot as Ryder pushes himself to run at full speed. Annie directs him to head towards the bridge on the left as the alien makes a U-turn. A female alien is proudly showing some kids her masterpiece when Ryder suddenly dashes past, completely wrecking it. She struggles to hold back her tears as Ryder keeps running. As the alien tries to escape, Annie approaches from the opposite direction. She instructs Ryder, who is plowing through everything in his path, to switch to Route 11. As the alien flees, Mori struggles with the violent shaking of the bag, completely terrified. Annie alerts Ryder that they are nearing the predicted destination point. The path ahead is blocked by yellow tape. Pushing through it, he finds himself at a dead end and anxiously asks Annie if she's serious. Annie quickly checks her map and urges Ryder to act immediately. He jumps down from that height, his white hair-like tail hitting the rocks and causing him pain. As the alien spots Ryder falling, he makes a U-turn, but is caught off guard as Annie appears above him in her bike form, blocking his escape. Now he is trapped between Annie and Ryder. He weakly asks Ryder who he is and why he is chasing him so aggressively. Ryder shouts for Mori, urging him to respond if he can hear him. Faint noises emerge from the alien's clothes. Annie scans the sound and confirms with 98% certainty that it's Mori. Ryder angrily demands the alien return his human. The bewildered alien asks what he is talking about. Ryder warns him not to play dumb, insisting that he has a tiny human in his pocket. The alien responds that he doesn't know what Ryder is talking about and brazenly lies, claiming he has been raising it all along. He questions why Ryder is trying to take something he raised himself. Annie informs Ryder that Mori's fear level is rising, making him even angrier. He points his gun at the alien, shouting for him to stop talking nonsense and hand Mori over immediately. The alien flatly refuses, saying Mori is too cute and that he has decided to raise him. Then he recognizes Ryder and describes him as a gullible outlaw with a forbidden creation, adding that he is quite notorious. He asks how someone as dangerous as him could raise a human. He claims he could raise him with greater love. He asserts that Ryder is keeping this child because he cares for him too. He questions how he is any different. Ryder says that if he is so certain, he should ask Mori whom they would prefer to be with. He responds that it doesn't matter. Ryder begins reloading his gun and dematerializes Annie. The alien warns him that firing a weapon in town will place him on the wanted list. He replies ominously that it doesn't matter, while Mori desperately cries for help. Mori is terrified because there seems to be no way out of this cramped, dim space. But as he sits down, he suddenly hears a voice speaking to him from the darkness. It's the doll his mother gave him, reminding him not to forget to use the bathroom before bed. On the other side, the alien proposes taking the head while the Ryder keeps the body. The energy level of his gun had reached 47%, enough to blow the head off. However, if that guy's pocket was muscle, it would contract forcefully upon impact, and the Ryder was uncertain whether the cloak would also prevent the compression. Angry Ryder was wondering if he could just get Mori out first. As the alien was speaking, he noticed something and looked down. He saw human waste flowing from his body and was revolted by it. He let out a loud scream as Mori peed in his pocket. A grin spreads across the Ryder's face as he notices Mori leaping out of the alien's pocket. The alien snarls, calling Mori filthy, his fury intensifying as he reaches out to seize him. However, a gunshot shatters his hand. He howls in agony and hurriedly scrambles to gather his scattered jewelry from the ground. Ryder points his gun at the alien's head and with a menacing tone firmly warns him to pay close attention. He makes it clear that if he dares to touch it with those filthy hands one more time, then he will be forced to crawl like a snake. The Ryder turns to check the source of the approaching voices, and when he looks back, the alien has vanished, as Annie suspects the gunshot was likely too loud. The Ryder swiftly materializes his bike, adjusts Mori's pants, and races away. As Mori clings to him, the Ryder exhales deeply, before breaking into joyful laughter. He starts imitating the moment and how flustered the alien had been earlier. Annie remarks that it was a truly ingenious method. Ryder commends Mori, saying well done. His little toy also tells him he is proud of him, and his mood shifts back to his usual cheerful self. He perches on Ryder's head, feeling majestic. Ryder asks Annie which direction they should take. Assessing the situation, she determines this is the fastest route, so they decide to head to the whale's cradle. Ryder angrily shouts at Mori not to climb any higher, and Annie urges both of them to stay still while he is driving. After some time, they were climbing a mountain. As they reached on its top, Mori becomes more amazed by how beautiful it looks from there. They wandered through forests and abandoned ruins with Mori playing alongside Annie. At times they camped outdoors, eating meat and avoiding dangerous creatures. One time when Ryder switched on his torch, he was beaten up by Mori, and Annie recorded in his database that Mori fears bright spotlights. As they traveled, they left messages behind. Annie picked up a wooden board, and he and Mori drifted in the water while playing with Ryder. As they approached a dark cave, numerous glowing eyes stared from within. As the monsters emerged from the cave, Ryder grabbed Mori and bolted while Annie took his left shoe. Some time later, Mori sat with Annie holding a crayon, and they had doodled on Ryder's sleeping face. After that, they rode a bike through breathtaking mountains and lush grasslands. Mori spotted a light in the distance and curiously gazed up at the sky. Giant whales soared through the sky, leaving him even more astonished. Among them, he spotted a baby whale drifting down near the surface. Mori raised his hand, reaching out to touch it. Ryder understood his intent and lifted him up in his arms. Enchanted, Mori gazed at the sky and raised his left hand again. As the baby whale floated above his head, it felt as if he were touching its fin, making the moment even more magical for him. They continued their journey like that. As Mori slept peacefully, he slowly opened his eyes and found himself cradled in a woman's gentle embrace as she comforted him with soft words. He closed his eyes and drifted back into sleep. When he woke up again, he found himself wrapped in a jacket. Ryder looked down at him, noticing he was awake. Ryder blames Annie for it, but Annie insists he was being cautious and tells him that if he's unsatisfied, he should drive himself. Ryder refuses, saying autonomous driving is a luxury. Annie mocks him, asking if he's incapable of doing anything without her. Annoyed, Ryder reminds her that he was the one who created her. Ryder stops his bike in front of a breathtaking snow-covered mountain and remarks that this place hasn't changed. Annie suggests they move quietly from here. Ryder reminds her that they saw them stirring at night and assumes that if those guys wake up and break their legs, they'll be forced to take the long way around. Ryder decides to show Mori something incredible. Annie questions if he isn't a bit over-equipped and wonders whether Mori can even walk. She thinks it's unnecessary since Mori also has that ultra-defensive cloak. Ryder responds that they can never be too sure what might happen. Besides, wouldn't it be fun to roll Mori up into a ball? Annie calls it abuse. As Ryder tries to convince a bewildered Mori, Annie notices something in the distant snowy mountains. She begins scanning the area and urgently calls out to Ryder, warning him of a fast-approaching presence. He wonders if they are hunters sent from town. Ryder is stunned when enro calculates their speed at approximately 491 kilometers per hour. He focuses ahead, trying to spot who is approaching. As he waits, a sudden, overwhelming pressure emanates from the opposite direction. A bad feeling washes over him. He summons his bike, swiftly mounts it, and slams the accelerator. He pushes his speed to the limit. Annie assesses the closing distance and estimates 2 minutes and 45 seconds until his arrival. Annie calculated the remaining time to be 53 seconds. Mori curiously glanced back as a figure emerged from the snowy mountains, rapidly approaching. Annie detected him and swiftly alerted Ryder, who brought his bike to a sliding stop and aimed his gun forward, unleashing a powerful plasma beam. The energy of the shot vanished, leaving Ryder bewildered. His shock deepened as he spotted a black hole consuming the energy. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurred, and Ryder protected Mori's body from the shockwave. A figure emerged from the thick snow dust, stepping forward. It was the same alien who had been tasked with finding something. Ryder couldn't believe it, and had never heard of a hunter capable of manipulating black holes. He questioned whether they would go so far as to hire someone like that just because he fired a few shots in town. The alien halted at a distance, but noticed Mori in Ryder's arms and silently observed him. Ryder asked Annie about his chances of victory if he went all out, and she responded with 16%. Stunned, he pressed for an explanation, and Annie clarified that there was a 7% margin of error accounting for natural disasters. He trusts Annie's probabilities to be highly accurate and concludes that the opponent is undoubtedly powerful. Determined to avoid a direct confrontation, he strategizes his next move. After a brief moment of thought, he points his gun forward and shouts, "It's now or never," before firing a plasma beam at a nearby mountain. Pushing his bike to its limits, he commands Annie to release the limiter. A warning flashes on the bike's display, indicating the activation of overclock mode. As he accelerates further, Annie cautions him to watch out for fractures due to the impact. He charges his gun and fires another plasma beam, striking a snowy mountain directly. An avalanche begins cascading down. Ryder pushes his bike to maximum output, believing that if they can just reach the bridge, they might have a chance to escape. He speeds ahead as the avalanche rapidly closes in behind them, but manages to escape safely. Pushing even faster, he shouts at Mori to hold on tight. Mori's face is smothered by the rushing air, and Ryder grows disoriented upon realizing the bridge ahead is completely gone. At that time, the alien was able to close the distance between them. Ryder whips out his gun and begins shooting plasma beams at the alien, but it easily blocks them with its black hole and continues chasing him. Ryder couldn't comprehend why that guy showed no intention of attacking and thought that if they could just reach the bridge like this, they might escape. But in that instant, the alien was suddenly right in front of his face. Stunned, Ryder's eyes widened as the alien grabbed him by the throat, tightening his grip around his neck. Ryder struggled, desperately thrashing his legs. Ryder pulls out his gun and shoots at the alien, but the black hole renders it ineffective. He seizes Ryder's hand with his white tentacle and tightens his grip around his throat. Ryder grits his teeth in anger as the alien turns to look at Mori. He starts bringing his hand closer to Mori, but sees his unwilling expression, which makes that alien surprised. As he gradually loosens his grip on Ryder's neck, Ryder quickly regains focus and leaps high into the air. He executes a backflip midair and plunges off the cliff. He asks Mori if he isn't familiar with this place. As they fall from the cliff, the alien rushes towards them, but is taken aback when a massive whale emerges with Ryder holding onto one of its fins. Ryder retrieves the bike, but the alien does nothing and merely watches Mori closely. Mori looks down at him as the whale begins to depart. After that, Ryder slowly wakes up in front of Annie and Mori. He asks if he passed out, and Annie explains that he was likely short of breath due to the sudden change in altitude. Ryder asks about Mori's condition, and Annie replies that he's fine. Annie commends Ryder for the strategy of awakening the sleeping whales. He wonders about their current location. As he scans his surroundings, he realizes they are in the city. First, Ryder puts Mori down, and they watch as the whales begin to leave. Ryder decides to go to the entrance now. Annie tells him they are unsure whether the warrant has reached the city and suggests he disguise himself. As his horns begin to dissolve, they curve downward and his hair cascades over his face. While shrugging off his jacket, he calls out to Mori, who turns back in bewilderment, leaving Ryder equally perplexed. Mori starts squirming and frantically searches for Ryder. Lifting Mori, who was anxiously trying to break free, Ryder tries to reassure him that it is him. Annie assumes he doesn't recognize him because his hairstyle has changed. Frustrated, Ryder asks what he is supposed to do now. An idea strikes Annie, and she sits on Mori's head wrapped in his cloak, while Mori sits on Ryder's head draped in his jacket. They start walking while arguing with each other, as it was uncomfortable. They suddenly stopped as someone greets them before the entrance of the city. It was a bot asking how it may assist them. Annie tells him they are here to meet the patch. He asks them to show the insignia. Mori begins to search for something. He takes out his bag, slamming it on Ryder's face. Annie shows him the letter. The bot presents them with a magical list from the owner to the members, who can all use the patch's insignia, and asks which one they are searching for. Worried, Ryder hadn't considered that they might be scattered in different places. Annie struggles to respond and wonders who they should go to. Mori glances up at the magic circle and rummages through his little bag. He pulls out the crystallized blue flower and shows it to the bot, which scans it and identifies only one person for it. He conjures a black door before them, but they fail to understand what it is and assume it to be some kind of portal. They circled around the black door and tried to touch it. The bot reassures them not to worry and explains that they will reach their destination regardless of the direction they walk. Annie thanks him. First, Ryder cautiously extends his hand into the portal before stepping through. They walk for a while inside and eventually emerge in a lush green grassland. They were both awestruck as they gazed upon a magnificent mansion nestled amidst lush grassland. Ryder asks what's up with that house, and Annie assumes it belongs to someone with a unique taste. Mori imagines it to look like his previous orphanage, which brightens his mood. He begins to approach it while Ryder slowly follows him. They were standing before the front gate, and Ryder mentions that they said someone could die if they enter the city without an invitation. He urges both of them to stick close to him. He tries to find a button he is supposed to press. Mori hears a voice and moves closer to the front gate. He spots someone near the window. As Mori watches closely, he sees a woman with long black hair that excites him, but she quickly disappears from sight. Mori swiftly squeezes through the front gate bars with his tiny body. He runs away while behind him an angry Ryder shouting at him. Mori comes close to that house and begins to climb through the window while Ryder was continuously warning him of the danger. Ryder nervously tries to press the doorbell, but there was nothing to open the door. Mori lands inside the house and finds himself in a long hallway. He notices an open door making a noise and quickly moves forward, eager to see his mom. He steps into the room and spots someone from behind, but it turns out to be a penguin-like alien. Confused, they ask who he is and how he got in. Mori grows even more nervous. While they are absorbed in discussing how they weren't expecting any guests and whether they should investigate, Mori hesitantly tries to slip away. Suddenly, the perfume of blue crystallized flowers catches his nose, and he starts looking around for it. They attempt to stop him, but he quickly dashes away. He notices another open door on the other side of the corridor. As he approaches it, he reaches out to open it, but suddenly bumps into someone carrying the same fragrance as blue crystallized flowers. He quickly looks up and notices countless eyes staring down at him, with eerie wings covering the person's face. Mori becomes speechless. He recalls the moment when Radina met her mom and then glances at that alien. She extends her hand, and Mori remembers his dreams of meeting his mom. As she tries to touch his head, he suddenly bursts into tears, his face adorably expressive. When Ryder arrives calling out to Mori, he starts crying even louder, troubling both the alien and Ryder. After some time passes and things settle down, Mori sits quietly under the bed facing a corner, while Ryder urges him to come out, and Annie gently tries to lure him with the promise of snacks. The other aliens were watching them while they were trying to convince Mori to come out. Ryder comes out from that room. The alien with wings on her head asks how it feels. Ryder responds that it isn't working and assumes he needs some time alone. She remarks that he looks really upset. He tells her it's the first time he has seen him cry like that. She assumes she wasn't as skilled as she believed, which surprises him. She greets Ryder and introduces herself as Miria, Mori's sponsor and the proprietor of Pei. As night falls, stars become visible through the window, and Ryder sleeps peacefully. Mori slowly emerges from the bed, his eyes swollen from excessive crying. He looks at Annie, who is recharging, and Ryder, who is asleep. Climbing onto the bed, he firmly slaps Ryder's face, but the drowsy Ryder groggily tells him not to do that. Mori shoots him a glare, then peers out through the door. He finds the corridor filled with moonlight and slowly begins crawl ahead while someone watches him from a corner. As he steps into the kitchen, he carefully tries to stand while looking ahead and notices some fruit on a shelf. He remembers Ryder suggesting he try those delicious fruits, but they were out of reach. Climbing a bit higher, he finally grabs one, filling him with joy. Just then, he hears a slurping sound and turns around. He notices Miria watching him from the doorway. Actually, she was lighting candles while sadly lost in thought. She heard sniffing sounds and turned around. She spotted Mori in the corridor, and for then she started observing him, but soon after Mori noticed her, which completely startled him, and he began frantically bouncing around the kitchen, which completely paralyzed her with fear, and she quickly fled. After some time, Mori finally settled down and swiftly found a hiding spot, while Miria remained concealed behind the wall. Suddenly, her gaze landed on some fruit. She observed them for a moment before picking one up. Then, she peeked into the kitchen and spotted Mori crouched behind the table. Realizing he was trying to reach the fruit, an idea sparked in her mind. She gently placed a fruit on the floor, letting it slowly roll until it stopped in front of Mori, who reacted with alarm. After a while, he calmed down, and the fruit remained untouched. Then, a tiny hand emerged from under the table, which Miria quickly noticed as Mori began eating it. Another fruit rolled to a stop in front of Mori. Wasting no time, he snatched it and quickly hid behind the table, which filled Miria with excitement. She kept repeating this for a while until Mori was completely satisfied. As the next day dawns, Mori wakes up to the sound of the maids and becomes alert. He quickly flees but almost collides with Ryder, who halts him with his tail. Mori looks up to see who it is. Ryder asks where he's rushing off to, while Annie notices something on his face and tells him to wash up. Suddenly, Mori clings to his leg and Ryder quickly scoops him up, exclaiming what's gotten into him this early in the morning. Annie smirks, remarking that his words may protest, but his actions tell the truth. He calls out to Mori and recalls what happened yesterday. Miria mentions that she isn't sure since Mori's language differs from that of humans and informs Ryder that Mori had left the shelter, so she only tracked him toward his home. She had no idea he would come this way and admits she doesn't know how to convey his gratitude. She places a box in front of the anxious Ryder and urges him to open it. As he hesitantly starts, he is stunned by what he finds inside. Inside was a stunning radiant crystal, which was actually a star fragment, and Ryder estimated it must be worth around 60,000. He became overjoyed realizing he was wealthy now. He let out a nervous laugh, then Miria expressed her gratitude for his hard work and decided to send her assistant to escort him out. But Ryder thought of Mori and his smile completely faded. He began reminiscing about every cherished moment spent with Mori and the adorable expression on Mori's face while sleeping. He suddenly mutters that he isn't ready yet, which leaves Miria completely baffled. A nervous Ryder urges her to consider that Mori cares about him deeply, so he can't be without him. He tells her that if he suddenly disappears, Mori will be devastated, and adds that he isn't exactly free either. He tries to assure her that he can stay by Mori's side until he adjusts. Miria asks if he can truly do that for them. While he is deeply engaged in the conversation, someone is heading towards them. When he turns back to look, he is horrified to see the four-eyed alien standing behind him. Miria introduces him as her assistant Yahello. She asks for forgiveness for her rudeness, explaining that she initially mistook Ryder for a kidnapper trying to exploit Mori. Ryder responds that it's fine. The scene shifts back to the present where Annie asks, "Is that so?" Ryder covers Mori's ears and tells Annie to stay quiet, saying that Mori wouldn't understand difficult words anyway. She questions why he's covering Mori's ears if that's the case. He suggests that Mori explore the area with Annie while he talks things over with the others. Annie agrees that it's a good idea and Mori leaves. Miria welcomed everyone and invited them to sit wherever they felt comfortable. Once most had gathered, she began explaining the situation. They still hadn't been able to contact Shalom. Curious, Ryder interrupted and asked who Shalom was. The others laughed, teasing him and saying that everyone knew the judge. Their reaction annoyed Ryder, but before he could say anything, Miria continued. She explained that the judge was the master of earth and the ruler of life. His 2 arms wielded the omnipotence of weight, while his 3 legs commanded the authority of balance. Along with her, Patch, and 7 others, they had been granted the power to open black holes for him. Shalom was one of those 7. Miria then added that the black hole Yahello had used was actually a fragment of her own power, something she had lent him. She went on to explain that Shalom's domain stretched from the mountain range to the river of Reden. Finally, she pointed out that the shelter where Mori had stayed was located in this very forest. It was all under Shalom's authority, so they had to communicate through Shalom, even when Mori vanished. She assumes they couldn't reach Shalom from the shelter, and also hadn't received the usual newsletter about Mori for several weeks, which is why they were delayed in searching for him. One of them says it's probably nothing serious, as Shalom is an exceptionally busy person, and these days once they drift into sleep it's difficult to meet them. Miria decides to continue sending messages, since they have no idea what's happening, and instructs Ryder to stay with Mori, and not move until they contact Shalom. He responds understood. Beside him, the maid rises ominously, asking if they should begin the real meeting. Ryder wonders what the real meeting is. She takes out some tiny tableware to display, leaving Ryder completely baffled, especially by its size. Ryder asks, "What is this?" She answers it's Mori's personal tableware, which she crafted yesterday. Ryder exclaims, asking how he's supposed to eat with this, but she replies Mori is incredibly small, only as big as a finger. Ryder questions if he's some kind of ant. While others try to calm her down, another maid approaches Ryder, saying she anticipated this and made plenty. She leads them to a giant bed for Mori, who enjoys staying underneath it, where he can even split 40 times. The others also eagerly show Ryder the things they have made for Mori. Ryder silently chuckles and thinks they are really getting excited. Meanwhile, Mori was with Annie, who was showing him around the house. Occasionally, Mori would draw on the floor and glance out the window. Then they played in the kitchen. After that, Mori pointed at various objects while Annie told him what they were. Suddenly, he pointed at something strange that Annie didn't recognize. Mori attempts to climb onto it, assuming it's leftover material from a previous project. Once on the table, he carefully examines the drawings. Annie recognizes them as handmade items and tells Mori she is referring to his cloak. As he gazes at the drawings, memories of the gift sent to his orphanage resurface. He gently touches the sketch with his tiny hands, envisioning Miria working on these creations, making him deeply understand her feelings. Someone arrives and calls out to Mori. It was the maid, explaining how much effort they put into stopping Miss Miria from leaving to search for him. She asks what they had been doing, and Annie says they were exploring the mansion. Noticing Mori fidgeting with his bag, she asks if they liked it. Annie says she doesn't understand how a building like this suddenly appeared in the city. The maid explains that this is a villa Miss Miria built herself because she wanted to understand Mori. Mori and Annie step out of the room just as Miria passes through the corridor. Mori locks eyes with her, but the moment she notices him, he panics and bolts away, leaving her disheartened. Ryder catches the moment and takes note of it. He mulls it over, and after a day passes, he finally speaks up, saying it would be best if they became friends. Miria's face lights up as she says that would be wonderful. Intrigued, Annie turns to Ryder and asks if he has any ideas on how to make that happen. Suddenly, a spark ignites in Ryder's mind, and they set Operation Befriend Mori into motion. The first strategy was snacks, with Miria offering her homemade cookies to Mori, but the plan flopped miserably since anyone could do that. Meanwhile, as they snacked on cookies, Ryder and Annie suddenly realized they had completely overlooked something. The second step was to spark Mori's interest by showcasing his favorite things. Ryder studies the situation intently and says, "Perfect," while Miria boldly stitches all of Mori's treasured items onto her outfit. Annie suddenly recalls seeing something similar in one of Mori's drawings. Following Ryder's plan, she casually strolls past him. As Miria approaches, Mori glances back at her and instantly shifts into his unusual state. She quickly apologizes, reassuring him that she'll return everything right away. The third step was to create a sense of familiarity using a bike. Ryder is convinced that Mori likes him, so doubling the effect will make an even bigger impact. Annie brings out the bike, and Ryder eagerly starts teaching Miria how to ride it. But with one reckless twist of the accelerator, the bike rockets forward, leaving Ryder barely hanging on while Mori bolts in the opposite direction. Annie smirks, casually mentioning that she's the one doing most of the driving these days, only adding fuel to Ryder's frustration. The fourth step was to recreate the moment Ryder first formed his friendship. Handing Miria his clothes, he explains that the other guy has agreed to play the villain, so when danger strikes, she can swoop in and save the day. A dark shadow looms over Mori as Giles suddenly steps forward. Ryder urges Miria that this is her chance, and she quickly swings the door open, only to freeze in shock. Mori has already taken Giles down. Ryder storms in, furious at the betrayal, shouting that they had agreed on bullying. They tried again and again, but every attempt ended in failure. As the night deepened, rain poured outside, filling the air with a steady rhythm. Mori slept peacefully on the bed, lost in his dreams, until a haunting memory surfaced, pulling him into a nightmare. He jolted awake, his breath unsteady. Glancing around the dark room, he found himself alone, but the fear in his eyes was undeniable. As he sat there, a sudden bolt of lightning split the sky, its sharp crack sending shockwaves through the air. Mori jolted upright, his body tensing as fear took hold. Pressing himself into a corner, he stood frozen before slowly inching toward the door, cautiously pushing it open in search of someone. Meanwhile, Ryder remained completely absorbed in his latest modification. He cautiously made his way down the dim corridor as rain hammered against the windows. His eyes darted around anxiously until he spotted a faint glow from an open door ahead. Moving stealthily, he peeked inside and saw Miria resting in a chair by the crackling fireplace, lost in deep sleep. As he crawled toward the warmth of the fire, his eyes landed on a paper lying on the floor. It was a report on child behavior observation, leaving him puzzled. As he inched closer to the fire, A sudden crack of lightning tore through the sky, startling him. In his panic, he instinctively leaped onto Miria, burying his face against her. Still lost in sleep, she wrapped her arms around him in a gentle embrace, completely catching Mori off guard. He cautiously lifted his gaze, realizing she was still asleep. Gradually, he relaxed, settling into the warmth as he hugged her back. A strange sensation stirred within him as memories flooded his mind. The gifts she had given him. It slowly dawned on him that she was like a mother to him. As time passed away, Miria slowly blinks awake, wondering when she had fallen asleep. She decides to return to her room, but freezes in surprise upon finding Mori nestled in her arms. Confused, she wonders why he is there and how long he has been. As she glances around, she considers calling Ryder and Annie. Suddenly, Mori clings to her even tighter. She watches him silently, noticing how peacefully he rests in her embrace, and a deep blush creeps onto her face. Nervously, she wraps both arms around him, pulling him even closer. As time passes, morning arrives. Ryder stirs from his sleep, and Annie remarks good work, before adding that it took longer than expected. Ryder responds that he had run it for quite a while back then. Deciding not to push himself too much for now, he continues walking. The passing workers greet him, but their unusually excited reactions leave him puzzled. They eagerly bombard him with questions about his health. Suddenly, a letter arrives at their front door, and one of the workers grows anxious, too busy to retrieve it. Ryder reassures her that he'll handle it. She thanks him as he heads down to get it. Before crouching at the doorstep, she reminds him to deliver it to Miria. As he picks up the letter, it's a notice informing people that he is dangerous. The words leave him completely speechless. Just then, Miria calls out to him, making him jump in surprise. Ryder quickly hides the mail and nervously says Miria seems to be in a great mood this morning. She asks if it's that obvious and wonders if he's free today by any chance. He replies that he has all the time in the world. She says that's perfect and mentions something about Mori's clothes. Ryder forgot that he is currently being hunted. While thinking, he was so shocked to see Mori crying that he completely forgot and absent-mindedly told her it's good. She asks if they should start getting ready to head out, leaving Ryder utterly baffled, and he hesitantly asks where. She casually replies to the center, making his situation even worse. His heart sinks as he asks if she means the city center, and she cheerfully confirms it without a second thought. Ryder's stomach drops. He's in deep trouble. After that, some aliens ushered them into a peculiar white room that felt both strange and unfamiliar. Ryder, wearing a mask, questioned where they had arrived. Miria explained that this was a place where clothes were commonly tailored. The shop owner mentioned that designs could first be previewed virtually and tried on, so modifications could be made instantly. Since the shop specialized in fully custom-made clothing, clients were required to visit in person, as it was a core part of the shop's unique philosophy. Miria added that human clothes were difficult to find, so it was wiser to rely on professionals rather than attempting to make them independently. The shop owner says they've heard plenty about Mori. He glares at her, and she expected it, acknowledging that they're quite imposing, but they were prepared for this. So they reveal the countermeasures obtained from Miria, effortlessly drawing his interest. Ryder warns that following so easily is dangerous, sending a chill through Miria as she rushes to Mori. Ryder recalls when he was utterly shaken and had never imagined a dedicated portal could stretch all the way here. He thinks the rich really are different, and that it was fortunate they didn't encounter anyone on the way here, but recalls asking Annie to locate the cameras. She begins scanning the area and reports that precise scanning is difficult due to security measures. However, she mentions there is one object with a lens behind Ryder, two in front, and security personnel within 5 meters outside the door. He thinks what he should do. He considers staying quiet for now and returning to the mansion, but wonders if he should quickly pack up and leave this place. As they lower the curtains, they unveil Mori in a bear costume holding a honeycomb. Ryder excitedly exclaims that it's adorable, but Annie questions why he's getting worked up and also asks Miria why she's crying. She adjusts the outfit on the panel before her and selects another, a jester costume with 2 wings on his head. A sharp cry escapes from Miria, and she quickly covers her mouth, insisting it's amazing, but Annie remarks that it merely seems that way. Then Ryder takes the digital screen from Miria and tries on a dress for Mori. He transforms into a heavy metal rock star with a 4-wheeled bike and its handlebar made of a skull. Ryder excitedly exclaims this is it, but Anise quickly dismisses their approach, saying it makes no sense. Determined to do it himself, she steps forward and Mori's attire shifts into a Sunil-like form while advanced technology seamlessly integrates with his body. She excitedly exclaims it's perfect. The store owner, intrigued by the transformation, decides to give it a try himself. In a breathtaking moment, he morphs into a flowing dress with 2 wings sprouting from his head while Miria holds her steady in awe. They change Ryder's shirt while holding Mori, who's dressed in a tuxedo with a cookie near his mouth. Suddenly, a thought crosses his mind that the wanted poster isn't his fault, and though firing a gun in town is illegal, it happened because Mori was kidnapped. He wonders if they'll truly understand. He calls out to Miria, saying he has something to share, but he hesitates midway, recalling the eerie alien's words questioning how someone as dangerous as him could raise a human, rendering him completely speechless. He also remembers when Miria mentioned that their guides would escort him on his way out, which only deepens his concern. He glances at Miria and Mori and asks if the letter written for Mori really means lovely circle, because he's been wondering about its meaning for a while now. She rummages through her clothes and pulls out a picture, showing it to Ryder. It depicts a grassland with something barely discernible in the distance. Miria says it's Mori and explains that, as usual, she was handling documents when she came across a letter from Shalom. It resembled a flyer being handed out in the city, so she was about to disregard it, but she chose to play it instead. She finds herself in a vast, vibrant grassland and suddenly realizes it was a video all along. In the distance, a lone house catches her eye. Beyond it, a hill rises where someone sits hidden among the tall grass barely visible. Curiosity grips her as she strains to see more clearly. Standing there is little Mori gazing back at her. She is spellbound, exclaiming it's too round, and wonders how can something be that round. As the video nears its end, she receives the picture and concludes the story, but a radiant smile glows on her lips. She tells him they recorded from afar because Mori was afraid of the camera. Apparently, he was watching an ant. She adds that before she even realized it, she had already completed the sponsorship process and was picking out a gift for Mori. She asks if it seems a bit dull. He disagrees, saying it's a solid start, then silently mutters, unlike someone else. While Annie was selecting the best materials for Mori, a worker behind them struggled with his task and accidentally dropped the digital screen, causing the lights to shut off. She quickly apologizes and decides to turn it on immediately. Mori fidgeted with his tiny hands, but when the lights suddenly flickered on above his head, he froze in fear, staring up at the glowing round-shaped lamp as a wave of past trauma crashed over him. Mori suddenly dashes forward, but gets kicked. The attacker prepares to stomp on him. Ryder tries to run toward Mori, but AIA warns him in time. Ryder notices a drone. Miria quickly uses her power to move Ryder and Mori to an empty space. Ryder checks Mori for injuries. AIA reports that Mori's pulse rises sharply. Everyone becomes worried when they see Mori sweating heavily and on the verge of tears. Later, Mori sleeps. Miria observes that his reaction does not seem to come from the light alone. Ryder agrees and notes that the gun's light is far brighter, yet has never affected Mori in this way. AIA reminds them that Mori remains fine even when Ryder accidentally burns down a whole area of trees, which creates intense brightness. Miria explains that they place more flames than electric lights in the mansion because old records show that when Mori's friends stayed with them in the past, they lived with oil lamps and candles. AIA adds that the records mention a strong sensitivity to spotlights. Ryder remembers using a flashlight in the cave, and again today. The sudden brightness affects Mori, but he notes that the store's light has a circular beam. Mori later plays happily while Miria and Ryder study a book together. At night, they gather with the others and listen as AIA tells a story about 3 pigs and a wolf, and how it secretly watches the pigs as they build their houses. Ryder notices the moving shapes on the wall and assumes it is a shadow play. The shadow images shift softly as Miria prepares the setup. She plans to begin with a square-shaped beam of light and slowly adjust it into a circular one. She hopes that by letting everyone focus on the gentle transitions of the shadow play, they can help Mori form pleasant and comforting memories. As AIA turns to the next page of the storybook, he unexpectedly finds Mori's drawings scattered across the paper. The sight flusters him for a moment, but he quickly recovers and continues the narration by adjusting the story to match the drawings he sees. Ryder and Miria grow increasingly confused because the story no longer follows any familiar pattern. They cannot understand what kind of tale AIA is shaping, but their confusion turns into quiet relief when Mori reacts with excitement. Mori smiles widely, clearly enjoying the strange, improvised version of the story. AIA continues narrating, and Mori's laughter fills the room in soft, joyful echoes. Elsewhere, in another location, a lone figure walks through the dim surroundings and requests that Miria be contacted. The next morning, Mori wakes up earlier than usual because the sunlight shines too brightly through the window. AIA notes the unusual timing as Mori slowly sits up, rubbing his eyes. Still half asleep, Mori walks to Ryder's bed and curls up beside him. Ryder remains drowsy and pulls the blanket slightly, wanting a few more minutes of rest. After a short moment, Mori leaves the room quietly and steps into the hallway, where the maids greet him warmly. Mori then runs straight into Miria's open arms, and she lifts him gently. The day marks 1 month since Mori began living with them. He plays around the house with growing confidence. At one point, he finds a bag of flour and shakes it around with excitement. The cleaning maid sees the mess spreading across the floor and panics, remembering she had just finished cleaning a short while ago. Mori's stomach growls loudly, and AIA observes that he is hungry. The maids react with mild surprise as they realize he needs food. They rush to prepare meals and feed him quickly, surrounding him in a flurry of movement. Afterward, because Mori is covered in flour from head to toe, the maids clean him thoroughly. AIA comments on how the scene resembles someone washing laundry rather than a child. When Mori finishes his bath, he wanders into Miria's study. Miria notices him and waves, inviting him to join her. Mori climbs onto the chair and begins scribbling with a pencil. Ryder soon enters the room and is taken aback by how focused Mori looks. Mori presses the pencil onto the paper with great seriousness while Miria works beside him. Miria attempts to show him how to copy the letters printed on a set of word cards. AIA scans the marks Mori makes and observes that none of the written shapes match the letters correctly. Miria, however, insists that there is a slight resemblance if they look carefully. AIA concludes that her judgment may be becoming clouded. Mori rummages through the bookshelf and pulls out a book. AIA offers to read it for him and examines the content. AIA notes that the subject resembles a natural phenomenon, while Ryder explains that the book discusses division, something he claims to have mentioned before. AIA admits that he still does not know the finer details. Miria expands on the explanation and describes how the method of division varies from species to species. She notes that the differences can span hundreds of years, but the basic principle remains the same. When a body reaches the end of its lifespan, the cells fall into a dormant state and return to their original form, either dividing from one into one or from one into many. Miria uses herself as an example, stating that she originates from the judge's fourth finger. She also mentions that Mori will eventually need a safe and protected place because he will become completely defenseless when entering Pyrop, though she admits this stage may be difficult for him. A maid later finds Mori scribbling on the wall again. Instead of scolding him harshly, she gently guides his hands and teaches him to clean the marks himself. Ryder, AIA, and Miria stand at a distance watching the scene unfold. Mori's expression begins to tremble as if he is about to cry. Miria kneels beside him and firmly reminds him that the wall is not meant for drawing and that he must not do it again. Ryder adds a warning that if Mori keeps disobeying, Giles will eventually scold him, which makes Mori lower his head quietly. A sudden notice arrives informing them that mail has been delivered. Ryder reacts immediately, flustered, and volunteers to fetch it. He rushes out and returns quickly with the envelope, handing it to Miria. She accepts it calmly while Ryder feels a wave of relief, grateful that the mail contains nothing alarming and no wanted posters. However, Miria then turns to Ryder with a serious expression and asks for a moment. Ryder's thoughts spiral as he wonders if he has made a mistake or if she has finally noticed something he tried to hide. Miria lifts a stone in her hand and explains that it is an item used to open the judge's chamber. She reports that she has already contacted the judge. Ryder panics internally, imagining that she may have been observing him all along and waiting for the right moment to hand him over. But Miria's next words stop his thoughts entirely. Instead of accusations, she calmly asks whether he has ever considered joining Patch. Ryder stands frozen in confusion, and Miria notices the expression on his face. She gently observes that the proposal may feel sudden, and Ryder becomes flustered, insisting that it is not too abrupt. Miria begins explaining her reasoning in a calm and steady manner. She tells him that she previously sent a message to the judge, requesting that Mori be officially recognized as a member of the pack. In response, she received an invitation for them to come in person. She believes the judge and the others want to evaluate the situation directly, especially since there are very few laws or established precedents concerning humans. Miria continues, noting that she has not yet heard from Shalom, but Shalom has always encouraged her to take bold steps like this, so she expects a positive reaction from them as well. She explains that if Mori becomes registered as a legitimate member of the pack, then the incident that occurred in town would be classified as an attack on the pack. Under that classification, she would be able to protect Ryder openly and firmly. She adds that once Ryder's wanted status is officially lifted, she herself intends to join the pack as well. Ryder cannot stop himself from wondering how long she has known about his situation. Miria calmly reveals that she has known from the very beginning. Ryder feels a wave of disbelief as he thinks about how she allowed a wanted person to live under her roof. Miria explains that she made that decision because Mori had been crying at the time, clearly showing how deeply he depended on Ryder. She adds that if something were to happen to Mori, she is not confident she would be able to restrain Ryder's reaction. She goes on to remind Ryder of the story he once shared about how he first met Mori. Through that story, she concluded that Ryder's wanted status must be tied to that very incident. She points out that it would have been simple to eliminate the individual responsible in secret, but doing so would not have resolved Ryder's wanted record. Ryder quietly agrees with her assessment as she hands him the stone once again. Miria then explains that life under her protection might be less thrilling than the wandering life he is used to, but she expresses her wish for him to stay with them. She asks him to consider the offer carefully. Ryder nods, acknowledging her words. Ryder later finds Mori asleep in the hallway, curled up in an awkward position. He gently lifts him into his arms. AIA studies Ryder's face and comments on the expression he is making, suggesting that it looks as if something good has happened. Ryder quickly denies it, trying to hide the small, unintentional smile forming at the corner of his mouth. Soon after, Mori is fully awake and neatly dressed by the maids. They have put great effort into grooming him, explaining that a child's first impression is important and worth the extra care. Mori stands stiffly as they adjust the final touches, looking both clean and adorably prepared. Ryder then calls Mori over and offers to carry his small bag. He gently ties a stone around Mori's neck, explaining that he cannot accompany him inside, but will remain close by throughout the process. Miria reminds Mori that if the experience becomes too stressful, he is allowed to request a postponement, but Mori nods firmly, signaling that he is ready. Miria sends the stone into the dark, shimmering surface that serves as a portal. She states that she must enter first to greet those inside, while Ryder and the others wait and follow the plan they practiced. Mori eventually steps forward and enters the portal. Ryder, AIA, and the others watch through the live projection that records everything happening inside. Miria proceeds ahead until she arrives in a vast galaxy-like space filled with swirling lights and star-like clusters. A deep voice calls out to her, one that Ryder immediately recognizes as the judge. Miria bows respectfully. Yahello, who is holding Mori's hand, instructs him to look toward Miria and walk straight ahead. A white circle appears on the ground, guiding his path. Mori follows it carefully, maintaining his balance with surprising steadiness. Ryder and the others feel relief watching him move confidently through the strange environment. However, the calm atmosphere shifts when Mori's eyes land on a distant figure. The figure stands motionless, wearing a mask that hides all expression. The moment Mori sees it, his face changes. A look of horror flashes across his features, sharp and sudden, as if something deep inside him recognizes a threat. Mori stumbles and collapses onto the floor, shaken by the masked figure's presence. Yahello and Miria immediately react with concern, moving toward him as they try to assess his condition. Mori does not respond. Instead, his wide, terrified eyes remain fixed on the masked figure. The sight triggers a surge of traumatic memories from his past, and his breathing grows sharp and uneven. The masked figure steps forward and extends a hand toward him. Miria reacts instantly, warning the figure not to approach any further. Her voice carries clear alarm, yet the masked figure continues its motion. Before anyone can stop him, Mori suddenly leaps toward the figure with desperate instinct and sinks his teeth into the figure's hand. Miria panics at the sight and prepares to use her black hole ability, but someone stops her and tells her that she cannot release that power in this place. Before she can act again, a burst of energy shoots across the chamber and strikes Mori, lifting him off the masked figure. Miria and Ryder both freeze in shock as Mori is enveloped by swirling lights, suspended inside a rotating circle of force. At that moment, the judge's main figure appears and calls out to Miria, demanding a full explanation. Ryder listens through the live projection and becomes furious as Miria relays the judge's conclusion, that Mori is considered unstable and that they suspect she might be responsible. They also state that Mori is safer within the judge's domain and should remain there for protection. Ryder rejects this idea with clear anger, unable to accept it. As she reviews the events, Miria herself becomes troubled, trying to understand how Shalom's search party could have entered the judge's chamber at all. Within the judge's vast domain, Miria stands before the assembled members. They discuss the situation, wondering how a child who originated from Shalom's territory could have traveled such an immense distance. They remark that it is impossible for a human infant to cover such ground alone. Meanwhile, Ryder and the others continue watching through the live projected record. They notice 3 towering figures standing near the judge. One of the maids identifies them as the judge's 3 legs, the 3 extensions of their authority and judgment. One of these legs turns toward Miria and accuses her of wanting a human so desperately that she ordered her aide to steal one from Shalom's shelter. Miria firmly rejects the idea and explains that Mori escaped Shalom's domain by his own strength. They question her again, insisting that a human should not be capable of breaking through Shalom's boundaries. Miria finally reveals the truth. She crafted clothing for Mori using Rauder's fabric, and she believes that this material is the reason he was able to leave Shalom's barriers behind. Miria is then questioned about whether she crafted the Rauder fabric clothing intentionally, knowing that Shalom's boundary was weakening, and whether she did so for her own benefit. She calmly denies the accusation. She explains that infants can become fragile for many trivial reasons, so she provided the clothing only in the hope that Mori would grow stronger and healthier. She insists that she had no hidden motives. Miria also explains that Shalom's group had grown worried because they had not received status reports on Mori from the shelter for several months. Her aide visited only to check on Mori's condition and discovered that he had vanished, which led them to begin tracking him. She states that this moment is the first time she herself hears that Shalom's boundary has weakened and that a traveler carried Mori into a city. When the judge's legs ask where the traveler is, meaning Ryder, Miria answers that Ryder is no longer in the city, purposely protecting him and hiding his involvement. One of the judge's 3 legs then brings up another incident, stating that they heard Miria previously lost Mori once in the city center. They mention that Mori nearly ended up trampled after colliding with a passerby, and that Miria even attempted to use her power in the moment, which could have caused serious harm. They ask whether she understands the gravity of the situation. Miria acknowledges her mistake, admits she was careless, and offers an apology. One of the judge's legs then declares that Mori is unqualified to remain and should be returned to human society. Another argues against the idea, stating that Mori cannot be sent back to a place negligent enough to allow him to escape in the first place. This second judge proposes sending Mori to the restricted area instead. Miria reacts immediately. She asks them to consider the emotional burden placed on a child who would have to adjust to yet another unfamiliar environment. She emphasizes that even if the restricted area appears similar to their domain, it is populated by humans who live in ways very different from the environment Mori came from. The towering central figure then directs attention back to the core question. What should be done with Mori? One of the judge's three legs responds that proper communication with humans is impossible for someone like him, claiming Mori lacks the intelligence required for language. The large figure turns toward Miria, questioning whether she agrees. Miria explains that while Mori's language abilities may be limited, he understands emotions and expresses them clearly and accurately. She appeals to them to allow her to take responsibility for Mori herself. The huge figure acknowledges her words and states that the matter will be considered. Another figure reminds everyone present that the judge prioritizes the safety and happiness of human children above all else. With that declaration, the assembly orders everyone to disperse for the day. Miria bows and begins making her way back. She suddenly hears a voice calling her name and finds herself standing in a dark space. There, she sees Mori and quickly pulls him into her arms. The voice continues speaking, saying that they do not live on the same days as others, and that the silence that comes when all light fades lasts endlessly, testing whether anyone can endure it. Miria holds the figure tightly as tears fall from her eyes. One of the maids approaches her colleagues who are with Ryder, asking how everything has been going. The other maids, however, are unsure how to respond, as they have noticed that Miria has been acting unusually withdrawn. It has been over a week since her mood lifted, and she barely eats anything, spending most of her time quietly in her room. The maids express concern, unsure how to help her. Ryder listens to their conversation and suggests that he could speak at the next judgment to try and resolve things. But one of the maids warns him that doing so might only make the situation worse. At that moment, Giles appears. He asks Ryder if he truly understands why Miria had to lie in front of the judge. He explains that everyone in the desert already knows Ryder as a reckless outlaw, and even if Miria were suspected, few would believe anything Ryder says. Giles emphasizes that acting without a proper plan could result in others taking AIA away, leaving them powerless. Ryder's anger immediately flares. He stands up to Giles, reminding him that he is the one who actually created AIA and therefore has the right to protect her. He insists that AIA belongs to him. Before the confrontation escalates further, AIA intervenes, gently urging Ryder to calm down. Even she feels a twinge of doubt, sensing that what Giles says might hold some truth. Just then, Ryder receives a message that a package has arrived. Curious, he goes to check and finds a letter. He reads through it quickly and immediately rushes into Miria's office. Breathless, he informs her that the letter contains a response to their earlier visitation request. They are officially allowed to see Mori. Upon hearing the news, the maids begin preparing everything they will need for the visit. Some gather Mori's favorite foods, including a few homemade juices he enjoys, while others collect small toys and items to keep him entertained. As Miria learns how much effort the maids put into preparing for Mori's visit, she feels deeply grateful and thanks them sincerely. Soon after, members from the judge arrive to escort her to the location where Mori is being held. While she walks toward him, she holds a picture in her hand, and emotions well up inside her. The memories it brings overwhelm her for a moment, but she steadies herself, reminding herself that she has to remain strong for Mori. When Miria finally sees Mori, she is shocked by his condition. She immediately asks what has happened to him, and the staff explains that he has been refusing to eat, forcing them to supply nutrients directly to him. Concerned, Miria asks how long this has been going on. The person in charge checks the records and reveals that Mori has not been eating at all since his arrival. The staff also complains that Mori has become extremely violent, having bitten almost every staff member who has tried to care for him. To prevent further incidents, the staff explains that all physical contact with Mori has been completely banned in order to minimize stimulation. They show Miria where she can stay to talk to him once he wakes up. However, Miria does not want to remain for long. She decides to leave after handing over the foods, juices, and toys she brought for him. Just as she is about to exit, Mori suddenly wakes up. He rushes to the glass screen of her room and sees that Miria has already left. His small face twists in sadness and frustration, feeling abandoned despite her brief presence. He begins crying and shouting Miria's name, calling for her with desperate urgency. The staff quickly notices the escalation and fears that he may become violent again. Medical personnel immediately administer a sedative, which calms him down and prevents the situation from spiraling further. At Miria's residence, the maids move quietly about the halls, debating whether they should bring her a meal. They worry that disturbing her might only make things worse. Miria has been unusually tense, and they fear that even a small interruption could trigger an emotional outburst, like setting off a storm within the mansion. As they hesitate, Ryder calmly passes by them and heads straight toward Miria's room. He calls out to her, insisting that they need to talk. Inside the room, Miria sits alone by the fireplace, the warm glow flickering across her face. She looks exhausted and apologizes to Ryder, saying that she wants to be left alone for now. Ryder's gaze falls on the table nearby and stops on a letter resting there. a letter of resignation. His heart tightens, and he cannot help but ask if she is planning to give up on Mori. The question hits him like a shock, especially after seeing her earlier in the day, taking the time to visit Mori personally. His voice sharpens with anger as he snaps, questioning whether Mori is just some object to her that she can casually hand over to someone else. Miria reacts immediately, her power flaring around her in a violent surge, the room chilling with the intensity of her energy. She looks at Ryder with icy determination and warns him not to make her angrier, explaining that she is only choosing what she believes is best for Mori at this moment. Ryder does not back down. He confronts her, asking whether this so-called best choice is really just an excuse to run away from the fight. Miria's eyes widen, and she snaps back, her voice cracking with frustration and tears. She reveals that Mori has been refusing to eat. Ryder is stunned. She explains, through her anger and grief, that Mori has been lying there for 2 full weeks without eating anything at all since the judgment took place, forced only to survive with the nutrient tubes hanging from his small body. Her voice trembles as she admits her own failings. She confesses that she acted out of greed, knowing that human lifespans are short. Using that as an excuse, she avoided contacting Shalom and deliberately did not return Mori to the shelter. She wanted to build a bond with him and stay together for as long as possible. She had believed that Mori would be happy too, but now doubts whether all her actions were motivated purely by her own desire for closeness. Miria's face contorts with anguish as she admits the terrifying possibility that the longer she prolongs this fight, the weaker Mori will become. If he grows sick or worse dies, she will bear the full weight of that consequence. Her words falter as she is about to voice the thought aloud, but Ryder cuts her off, his tone harsh yet protective. He tells her not to say such weak things, reminding her that Mori is so tiny, and even one wrong move could be fatal. Ryder's gaze grows distant as he recalls the first time they saw Mori in the Red Desert. The memory weighs heavily on him, and for a moment he struggles to find the right words to convey the danger, the responsibility, and the fragility of the child. Seeing his hesitation, AIA quietly interjects, asking what Ryder is trying to express. Ryder's expression hardens as he recalls the journey they took. He points out that even someone like him struggled to cross the long distance to get here, yet Mori, in his tiny, fragile body, had somehow made the effort to reach Miria, to be close to her and share time together. Ryder's voice grows firm as he describes the look in Mori's eyes. The quiet plea, the longing, the desire to return and stay by her side. He turns to Miria, his tone sharp and accusatory, asking if she is really willing to make all of Mori's struggles and efforts meaningless. Miria's hands tremble slightly as she responds. She explains that she received a call earlier today informing her that suitable human parents have been found for Mori in the restricted area. The suggestion is that, according to human custom, a child should be raised by a mother. Miria's voice softens with uncertainty as she admits that she does not know how to proceed in light of this news. Ryder, however, reacts with disbelief and anger. He retorts that no one should care about such customs, insisting that Miria and he are capable of raising Mori themselves. The mention of the mother requirement surprises Miria. AIA speaks to Ryder, suggesting that they should try once more to strategize and improve their chances in the judgment. Ryder agrees and decides to work closely with the maids, explaining that in order to win, they must show that their care and efforts for Mori are far superior to anything that the restricted area could provide. The maids immediately begin brainstorming, thinking about what they excel at and how their contributions could demonstrate their devotion and capability. While they plan, AIA interrupts with an explanation drawn from Miria's extensive data. She informs Ryder that humans have genders and reproduce by having offspring. AIA goes on to describe the concept of marriage as a formal bond between 2 adult humans, and explains that when a child is raised by them, the adults are considered the child's parents. Hearing this, Ryder immediately jumps to the conclusion that he and Miria must already be a couple. At first, Miria hesitates, unwilling to accept the implication. AIA then asks what Ryder would choose if a child could only have a mom or a dad. Miria quickly responds that she would accept being called a mom. Ryder, however, surprises her by saying he also wants to be a mom. He asks AIA whether it is possible for a child to have 2 moms. AIA admits that she has limited data on such a situation, but believes it should be acceptable. The maids continue refining the plan. One suggests that they should emphasize their strength, noting that humans admire displays of fighting ability. AIA adds that humans also measure strength through wealth. Ryder hears this and feels confident, but AIA quickly points out that he is broke. The group quickly pivots, searching for another way to demonstrate their value. Finally, one of the maids suggests they focus on proving their love for Mori. They begin recounting all the ways they have supported and cared for him, realizing that their actions have been countless and thoughtful. Their reflections reinforce the idea that they have devoted significant effort to ensuring Mori's happiness and well-being. However, a small disagreement arises when one maid points out that Mori has never rejected any of the food she has cooked for him. Another maid reminds her of the most recent batch of food she prepared, which Mori refused and sent back, showing that not every effort had been accepted. Not long after, data from the shelter arrives, though the team immediately notices that it may not be complete. Communication with the shelter has been inconsistent from the start, and they are unsure whether they have received the proper information. It becomes clear that, No matter what they have in hand, they do not possess enough details to fully understand Mori's past and circumstances. Observing this, Miria realizes that she must speak directly with Shalom, the one who likely knows the most about humans and, in particular, about Mori. However, she is informed that Shalom is not answering any calls or messages. Despite this, Miria does not panic or hesitate, which surprises one of the maids. The maid wonders if Miria is seriously considering going to Shalom without an invitation, knowing how dangerous it could be. Miria calmly insists that they are limited by the data currently available, and that Shalom is the only one who could provide the insight they desperately need. She points out that Mori was found right next to Shalom's domain, suggesting that Shalom might have information about him even from before his rescue. Her tone is firm, and her decision seems resolute. By chance, one of the maids happens to know where Shalom might be at that moment, and Miria quickly confirms the location. It is a place known as the playground. Ryder looks puzzled and asks about this location. He is told that the playground is a domain Shalom created before preparing a separate area specifically for humans. It is a place where Shalom concentrated all of his power, gathering the things he enjoys, making it unique and dangerous in its own right. Giles steps in to warn Miria of the risks. He explains that staying too long in a space created by another's power, especially without the owner's permission, could overwhelm her sense of self. The energies present in such a domain are so intense that they could cause her to lose her sanity. Additionally, he notes, they do not even know the exact location of Shalom's playground, adding another layer of danger. Despite all these warnings, Miria does not waver. She acknowledges the risks but remains determined to go. She insists that she must take the chance because the information Shalom holds may be the only way to truly understand Mori and ensure his safety. As Ryder watches Miria stand firm in her decision, he finally accepts that she will not change her mind. He nods and tells her that they need to prepare quickly if they are going to move forward. Miria feels a flicker of surprise at his response, but Ryder reassures her firmly that they have no choice but to act. Time is limited, and hesitation could cost them precious opportunity. Giles steps forward and begs Ryder to let him accompany them. He promises that he will do everything he can to make Miria feel comfortable and supported during the journey. One of the maids, however, doubts his claim. She quietly thinks that, in reality, Miria will end up protecting both Ryder and Giles, rather than the other way around. She questions whether either of the men would actually be of much help in such a dangerous endeavor. Undeterred, Giles reassures the maid that if he is given access to a portion of his black hole power, he can operate independently in Shalom's playground for about a day. He believes that splitting up will allow them to locate Shalom more efficiently and cover more ground. Miria then turns to Ryder and AIA, asking them to lead the way, as she has never traveled to such a distant and unusual place before. To navigate, Miria uses a star fragment. Ryder observes it in awe. It is the first time he has ever seen a star fragment used in his lifetime. One of the maids had previously opposed the idea of using it to find Mori, fearing the risks, but Miria reassures Ryder that it will help them reach their intended destination. She cautions, however, that since they do not possess a token or formal invitation, they cannot know exactly where the star fragment will lead them. With the fragment activated, Miria instructs Giles and Ryder to stay close. The fragment ignites with a shimmering light, and the group is lifted into the sky. They travel swiftly through the clouds, leaving the land behind as the fragment propels them over vast stretches of ocean. Giles, Miria, and Ryder travel together, their journey taking them across a vast and varied landscape. They first arrive at the shore of a wide, endless ocean, the waves stretching into the horizon as they continue walking along the sand. From there, they move through open plains, the grass swaying gently in the wind, before climbing rugged mountains where the air is thin and crisp. Later, they navigate through lakes surrounded by dense forests, carefully wading through the water while keeping an eye on their surroundings. Their path then leads them deep into the woods. As they move cautiously between the trees, Ryder spots a massive creature coiled around a large trunk. His heart races, and he instinctively moves closer to Miria for protection. They tread carefully, keeping their distance from the creature, until they eventually emerge into grassy fields. As night approaches, they find a cave to camp in. Ryder asks Miria if she is all right, noticing her fatigue, and she admits she feels embarrassed, explaining that it has been nearly 100 years since she last traveled such long distances. As darkness settles and small, glowing lights appear around the cave, Miria remarks on their beauty, noting that Mori would have loved to see this sight. Ryder agrees, smiling at the thought, but AIA interjects with a practical observation. Mori would likely try to put the lights in his mouth first. Ryder laughs, adding that Mori must have been too busy running away to think about eating. AIA continues, speculating that Mori's luggage has probably grown by 67% due to all the things he carries, prompting Ryder to exclaim in disbelief that such a tiny child could have a suitcase possibly larger than his own body. Small ways he expressed his feelings. The memories stir a resolve within him. He decides that he will never allow Mori to feel fear or sadness like that again. Ryder and Miria exchange smiles, silently acknowledging their shared determination. The group spends the night in the cave and continues their journey the next day. They carefully traverse narrow mountain cliffs, where Ryder nearly slips. Miria extends her arm to steady him, and he gratefully takes hold. As they move forward, Ryder notices skeletons arranged in a kneeling position, a silent testament to some past tragedy. They press on, eventually entering a massive cave. There, behind a towering pillar, they spot several strange creatures lurking in the shadows. Ryder scans the cave cautiously and asks if the large creature they spotted is Shalom. Miria shakes her head, confirming that it is not. Curious and unafraid, Ryder reaches his hand toward the creature. Instantly, a swirl of green energy wraps around his arm, startling everyone in the group. Ryder's attention is then drawn to a masked figure with a red circle painted on its face, standing a short distance away. Giles reacts immediately, firing at the masked figure, but the figure effortlessly uses the same wave of energy to restrain Giles' movement, preventing him from acting further. The masked figure then leaps over Giles, moving directly toward Ryder and the others with alarming speed. Sensing the imminent danger, Giles calls out to Miria. Reacting instantly, Miria unleashes her ability, opening a space that envelopes and traps the masked figure within a black hole. From inside the swirling darkness, the masked figure speaks, addressing Miria directly. He claims that she startled him, explaining that he had been about to capture the creature, thinking it was a wild animal. He never imagined that it would be Miria confronting him instead. His voice carries a hint of surprise and familiarity as he remarks that it has been a long time, about 150 years. Miria bows slightly and apologizes for arriving without notice, addressing the figure as Nepal. Nepal expresses his amazement at how far she has traveled to reach this place. He adds that if Shalom were present, he would be overjoyed to see her. At that moment, Miria realizes that Shalom is indeed not here. Nepal apologizes for not considering that side of things. He explains that the shelter was never originally his responsibility, so he never imagined such an unexpected situation could occur. Miria, feeling the weight of her actions, says that she and the others feel terrible for unintentionally hurting one of their own. Nepal quickly reassures her not to worry. He explains that humans often act excitedly during a rescue mission, and from the child's perspective, the kidnappers appeared threatening. It was only afterward that they realized there might have been wild creatures living in the area during the rescue. He emphasizes that their search party may appear rough and intimidating, but the members are tough and capable, so Miria should not be concerned. As the conversation continues, Miria notices something important. Shalom has entered the division. Ryder is visibly startled by this revelation, while Giles seems to understand immediately. He explains that it makes sense, considering that Shalom's kind were present in the judge's chamber. Miria explains that Ryder's fabric is not strong enough to break through a domain boundary, yet Mori managed to leave the domain easily. She concludes that this must be because Shalom's control had weakened after entering the division. She wonders aloud whether the judge is protecting Shalom. Nepal nods and confirms that the judge's domain is the safest place in the universe. He explains that the judge has provided everything necessary for the division, and that all of Shalom's closest aides entered the division chamber together. The remaining aides are stationed around the surroundings, dedicating themselves entirely to the judge, while Shalom stayed behind to manage the playground. Nepal admits it is a little awkward to say, but Shalom is a somewhat laid-back individual. His sudden entry into the division caused absolute chaos for half a year. AIA comments that this makes sense given the situation. The group realizes that meeting Shalom directly will not be possible for now. Miria clenches her clothes in frustration, but Nepal tries to lighten the mood. He suggests they look around the playground, insisting that there are countless fascinating things Shalom collected while indulging his interests. He points out a space that perfectly recreates Mesozoic-era weather, then gestures in another direction toward a room filled with miniaturized versions of Shalom's favorite creatures. Nepal begins describing the archive room upstairs, which contains data on beloved creatures such as humans and others. Before he can continue, Ryder interrupts, immediately asking if they can see the archive room. Nepal leads them up the stairs, explaining that visiting the archive is not a top priority for Shalom, but he always felt pity for humans. He explains further that the deeds of adults are meant to be observed and inherited by younger generations, especially those tasked with watching over little ones. This, he adds, is the path Shalom chose for himself. When they reach the entrance to the archive, Nepal places his hand on the system interface and warns that it will not be easy to access. Miria and Ryder exchange tense glances, their anticipation mounting, and proceed into the room. As they step inside, they are confronted by a massive black hole suspended above them. Ryder stares at it in awe and curiosity, unable to hide his wonder, and asks aloud what it could possibly be. Miria looks up at the massive black hole of data and explains that it contains all the information Shalom has collected so far about the things he likes. She notes that since humans are also animals, much of this data probably starts from the cellular level, tracing patterns and traits from the very foundation of life. Nepal adds that the real problem is that the data has never been properly organized. The task was abandoned a few thousand years ago, leaving it in its current chaotic state. Miria, however, insists that they only need to extract records specifically related to humans. Ryder immediately narrows the focus even further, saying they only need the data concerning mothers. While surveying the enormous collection, AIA notices a gadget lying among the files. Miria comments that with the sheer volume of data, it would take at least a year just to classify everything manually. Ryder frowns, pointing out that waiting that long is impossible, the judgment is only the day after tomorrow. Miria says she will try to find a solution despite the time constraint. Ryder warns her that she cannot overexert herself, as she will need to be fully alert in the judgment chamber. Meanwhile, AIA asks how much power they currently have, indicating it wants to use an amplifier device and requests if Nepal can lend it to them. Nepal agrees but cautions that there is no device ready to use with the amplifier. AIA assures him it will be fine and asks Ryder to let it attempt the process. Ryder's patience snaps. He scolds AIA for overexerting itself in the whale's cradle for too long previously and asks what the probability is that it can survive more than 10 minutes in its current state. AIA calmly replies that the probability of damage is 88.2%, causing Ryder to worry even more. Despite the risk, AIA adds that Ryder created it with purpose, giving it a name and even a smiling function, so it was never meant just for convenience. It admits that while it dislikes seeing Ryder look smug, his repair skills are quite useful. AIA continues, explaining that its classification range might be small, a mere speck, but even that would be helpful. It enters the amplifier, instructing the group that the rest is up to them and reminding them to make sure Mori is brought along at some point. As AIA begins to read and classify the massive volume of information, Ryder notices a red warning flashing repeatedly and immediately voices his concern that there is too much data for it to handle safely. AIA reassures him not to touch anything and continues, recalling memories of Mori to push through the work. However, soon electrical failures erupt from the amplifier, striking AIA directly. Ryder panics and rushes to grab it, calling out anxiously. AIA weakly mutters something in response and powers down completely. Ryder turns to Miria, asking if she managed to retrieve the data. She confirms that she has, prompting Ryder to declare that they should head back immediately. Ryder is still doing everything he can to repair AIA, while Miria and the others continue trying to access the stored information. After some time passes, Miria comes over to check on Ryder and see how AIA is holding up. Ryder explains that the parts Miria brought earlier are actually much better than the ones he originally had, so they are more than enough for the repairs. However, he also explains that AIA's memory condition is in a very critical state. Even if AIA powers on again, there is no certainty that any of its past memories will remain. The only way to know is to wait until AIA turns on the next day and confirm its state directly. Miria feels the urge to panic after hearing this, but Ryder remains calm and confident. His attitude reassures her, and she holds back her worries without saying anything further. After that, Ryder mentions that the amount of data they are dealing with is extremely large. Even so, he understands that this is only the beginning and that they still have a long journey ahead before everything is fully understood. Ryder then turns his attention to the meaning of mother. To him, it feels like more than just a role, and he senses that it also represents something deeper, almost like a symbol. Miria expands on this idea by explaining that mothers are often used as metaphors and as terms of affection. So she also believes that the word carries symbolic meaning beyond its literal sense. Ryder continues to wonder whether mothers can truly fulfill all the roles recorded in the data. He finds it hard to believe that they can accomplish even half of those responsibilities, even if everyone in the mansion works together. Miria herself is uncertain as well. She is not sure she would be accepted if she tried to imitate all the mothers recorded in the data. Still, she holds on to the hope that they might find information about Mori's birth mother within Shalom's records. Ryder is unsure whether such data might exist among the information they were unable to bring with them. Miria believes it is possible, but she notices that the judge did not search for that data first, which makes her feel that there must be a specific reason behind that decision. Later on, Ryder suggests that it may have been judged that Mori's mother was unable to accept him. He believes that not all mothers are in a proper condition to raise a child, even if the title of mother exists. At that moment, Miria picks up the puppy with Ryder and feels that it does not seem completely real. Ryder, however, thinks that if Miria looks more closely, it appears quite accurate. He explains that the data shows puppies are among the gifts that children love the most. Since puppies, like humans, are a species facing extinction, there is very little information available about them. Because of this lack of data, Ryder creates the puppy using only written descriptions as a reference. Miria still refuses to fully agree, as she strongly believes that most things in the world are only imitations and not truly genuine. She feels that even something that looks real on the surface can easily be false at its core. Ryder responds by firmly opposing this view and makes it clear that, regardless of whether something is real or fake, what truly matters is that Mori likes it. To him, Mori's feelings give meaning to the object itself, and that alone is enough to justify its value. After some time, Miria opens up to Ryder and reveals the feelings she has been keeping to herself. She admits that she has always been jealous of him, especially because he was able to share both happiness and danger with Mori and overcome those moments together. She explains that she also wanted to become someone like Ryder, a person who stands so close to Mori's side. Because of these emotions, she confesses that she initially sent Ryder away, pretending that it was for Mori's own good, even though her true reason was rooted in her jealousy. However, as time passes, Miria reflects deeply on her actions and comes to realize that Mori would never have wanted such a separation. She understands that forcing them apart is wrong, and this realization weighs heavily on her heart. That is why she decides to make Ryder leave by his own choice instead. In order to do this, she offers him a very large amount of money, hoping it would persuade him to walk away willingly. At that moment, Ryder is left completely speechless. He never imagined that this had been Miria's true intention all along, and Miria is aware that he might see her as someone weak and pitiful because of it. Just as Ryder is about to admit that he too once felt envy toward Miria, a signal from the other room interrupts the moment. Miria immediately moves to investigate, and Ryder follows closely behind her. When they arrive, Ryder witnesses that AIA has finally started functioning again. AIA still recognizes Ryder, which brings a sense of relief. Yet Ryder remains uncertain about whether they will ever truly have a chance to win the judgment. Despite this doubt, he checks whether AIA still remembers how to take the bike out. AIA responds with urgency, making it clear that there is no time to waste and that they should begin leaving immediately, as fast as they possibly can. By this time, the disinfection process is fully completed. Ryder has already arrived at the place where Mori is being held. The moment Mori sees Ryder, he begins to cry intensely and calls out to him in distress. Ryder immediately tries to calm him and urges him not to cry, explaining that he has come to rescue him. He assures Mori that he will stay by his side and support him completely, taking on the roles of parents, siblings, and family all at once, so that Mori will never have to feel alone again or cry from loneliness. At the same time, Ryder explains that AIA has gone offline once more. He reassures Mori that once AIA wakes up again, they will be able to escape even farther than before. However, Ryder also admits something important to Mori. He tells him that he does not want Mori to grow up living the same kind of life he himself has lived. He further explains that there are others who are trying to take Mori away from him, and although they are still resisting and fighting against it, their chances of winning are very small. Ryder also reveals that the one who imprisoned Mori is deeply curious about what Mori truly thinks and feels. Ryder explains that it was AIA who urged him to come immediately, and he believes this urgency exists because the answer they are searching for lies with Mori himself. Ryder understands that they need Mori's power, but more than that, he wants to know if Mori has a way to convey his true feelings. Mori tries to express himself, but his voice does not reach Ryder properly, and Ryder is unable to understand what he is trying to say. Realizing this, Ryder gives Mori a book and several pencils so that he can communicate through writing and drawing instead. As soon as Mori receives them, he begins to write and draw earnestly. He fills the pages with memories of the kindness and warmth he has received over time, recalling how Miria, Ryder, and the maids hugged him, cared for him, and made him feel genuinely loved. Mori continues by drawing everything that holds meaning to him and everything that has become part of his precious memories. As time passes, Mori becomes deeply absorbed in his drawing. When Ryder notices that Mori is taking a long time, he urges him to hurry. Even then, Mori remains focused and continues drawing, determined to express all the feelings and memories that matter to him. At that exact moment, the staff working in the facility where Mori is being held suddenly check the CCTV monitors. On the screen, they clearly see a figure outside the window of Mori's room, using a rope to stay suspended along the side of the building. One of the staff members initially assumes that the person might be a cleaner, but he feels confused and uneasy, wondering why someone like Ryder would choose to use a rope instead of proper equipment or another safer method to reach the building. Soon after, another staff member speaks up and points out that there is no cleaner scheduled to work that day. This realization immediately changes the situation, making it clear that the person outside the window cannot be a staff member and must be an intruder. The alert spreads quickly, and the guards are notified at once. The guards rush to the area and call out to Ryder, demanding to know what he is doing outside the window. By this time, Ryder has already taken the drawing papers from Mori. However, before he can make any move to escape, a powerful light is suddenly flashed directly at him, freezing him in place and preventing him from moving any further. At the same time, the information is rapidly shared throughout the facility, and everyone becomes aware that Miria is first seen asking the maids about Ryder. After that, she calmly adds that she believes in Ryder and is certain that Ryder will return safely, and that she herself will also come back. With that belief in mind, Miria then heads toward the judge's chamber, where the process of judgment begins. During the judgment, one of the judge's three legs states that the matter of the restricted area is already being considered in a positive way. At the same time, it points out that Miria still refuses to step back from her decision. In response, it is made clear that Miria does not intend to give up unless Mori himself clearly expresses his own will to leave her. However, the judge's three legs then criticizes Mori, stating that his intelligence is extremely low and that he cannot even properly form the language of his own species. Because of this, it expresses doubt about how Miria believes she can educate and guide such a human, especially since she herself is not human. Miria openly acknowledges that Mori truly needs education about human society. Because of this, she contacts Shalom's shelter, where Mori previously stays, and discusses the situation with them. After this discussion, she receives a positive response. However, the judge's three legs points out that the authority over the shelter belongs to Shalom, and that Shalom is currently part of division. Miria responds by stating that she is fully aware that the judge now holds Shalom's authority. She then earnestly asks for their help, explaining that if they allow it, Mori can learn about human society in an environment that feels familiar and safe to him. Miria then presents visual records of the caretakers working at the shelter within Shalom's domain. These images show how the caretakers struggle to protect many children, while continuing Shalom's will to safeguard lives during times of human war. She explains that taking care of living beings is always difficult and filled with hardship. Because of this, she asks them to understand that those who take on such responsibilities are beings capable of making mistakes. She also urges them to remember that they themselves carry regrets from the past. When creations capable of learning and gaining knowledge are sacrificed in meaningless factional conflicts, the one who feels the deepest sorrow is none other than the judge itself. Even after this, the judge's three-legged states that understanding past mistakes alone is not enough. It insists on knowing how Miria can prove that she alone is capable of handling the many responsibilities required of a guardian. In response, Miria presents a formal statement submitted by members of their patch. This statement explains that the members are fully willing and able to act as guides for Mori because of their deep affection and concern for him. It also states that human society has already collapsed to a great extent, and if the burden of guardianship becomes too heavy for one individual, then the responsibility should be shared by everyone involved. However, the judge's legs firmly insist that no matter how good Miria's intentions may be, the relationship she seeks to maintain is built on a clear hierarchy and is therefore unequal. They explain that such an imbalance can become dangerous to Mori, especially because Miria understands better than anyone the risks that come with holding authority. They further point out that, among humans, the inequality between adults and children carries the same dangers, as power can easily turn into control, even when it begins with care and protection. In response, Miria explains that the great power granted to her by the judge has always served as a means of protection rather than harm. Still, she states that if the judge believes this authority could pose a threat to Mori, then she is prepared to give up that power entirely. At this declaration, the judge's legs react sharply, criticizing her for even suggesting that she would refuse or abandon the abilities that were directly bestowed upon her by the judge itself. The judge's legs then press her further, questioning whether she truly believes she is suitable to remain by Mori's side and whether she thinks she can become a complete and proper mother to him. Miria responds by admitting that she does not know the answer. Even after examining an enormous amount of accumulated data, she still cannot find a clear conclusion, and she accepts that she may never reach one, not even by the day Mori eventually leaves her side. She explains that while she understands the general definition of a mother as it is commonly accepted, the true meaning of Mori's mother is something that only Mori himself can define. Because of this, she expresses her hope that it will be them who walk beside him as he searches for that meaning, and she sincerely pleads for the judge to grant her that chance. While the session is still ongoing and the judgment has not yet concluded, the door to the chamber suddenly opens. It is revealed that the one who enters is Ryder. Miria is immediately taken by surprise at his appearance, and she instinctively calls out to him as he steps into the chamber. However, at that very moment, Ryder is suddenly transported by the judge's power into a vast, empty, and dark space. It quickly becomes clear that he has been captured. He is identified as a wanted individual and labeled as wanted number 250106, Ryder. The judge's presence conveys that Ryder's act of entering the judge's chamber so boldly is reckless and irrational. In response to this atmosphere of accusation, Ryder shows no sign of fear. Instead, he expresses the idea that raising a child has never been something that can be done with a completely sane mind in the first place, implying that devotion and care often require abandoning reason. Ryder then explains that his purpose for coming is tied to Mori. He states that there is curiosity about Mori's thoughts and feelings, and with this, he presents a large bundle of papers. He claims that these papers contain a letter written by Mori himself. Upon examining the documents, the judge's legs recognize that the writing truly belongs to Mori, and that the emotions and intentions within the letter are genuine. Ryder openly admits that he knows he is deeply flawed and far from admirable. Even so, he declares that Mori cares for him, and because of that bond alone, he is willing to do anything for Mori's sake. After witnessing this resolve and reviewing what has been presented, the judge declares that the judgment will now be passed. At the same time, Mori is shown within the restricted area. Without warning, he suddenly falls into the same empty space. His descent ends when he gently lands upon the judge's massive palm. The judge addresses Mori with warmth, referring to him as a young star. The judge then returns Mori's clothes to him and grants him permission to live the life he truly desires. In doing so, the judge acknowledges that Miria's words are correct. It admits that there is no love more complete, sincere, and selfless than the love that surrounds Mori at this moment. Mori is then transported to a wide grassy plain. As he opens his eyes, he slowly looks around the open field and takes in his surroundings. Before long, he notices Miria, Ryder, and the members of the patch standing together at a distance. They are visibly excited as they wave toward him and call out to him. Seeing them safe and together fills Mori with joy. A bright smile spreads across his face, and without hesitation, he runs toward them as fast as he can. Back in the judge's chamber, the scene shifts to the judge and the attending subordinates. The subordinates ask how the evidence known as Mori's drawings should be officially recorded. The judge calmly responds that they should be recorded as the path to meeting Mom. giving the drawings a meaning rooted in love and longing rather than formality. At the same time, Mori is shown reaching the group on the grassy plain, where he is immediately surrounded and embraced warmly by Ryder, Miria, and the others, their relief and affection clearly shared. Meanwhile, elsewhere, AIA begins to slowly regain its power, signaling recovery and renewal. With balance restored and bonds affirmed, everyone moves forward into a peaceful future, and they all live happily ever after.